The council chamber stretched high above the gathered delegates. 43 different species filled the massive room. Some breathed oxygen like humans did. Others required special suits filled with methane or ammonia. The variety of life in the galaxy always amazed Jake Morrison, even after 15 years as Earth's ambassador. Today felt different, though. Jake stood at the central podium, his hands resting on the smooth metal surface. Behind him sat the entire human delegation, 20 men and women who had dedicated their lives to building relationships with alien civilizations. They all wore the dark blue uniforms of the diplomatic corps. Their faces showed no emotion as they waited for the vote results. The vote had been simple. After 200 years of service to the Galactic Council, humanity had requested full membership status. They wanted the same voting rights that every other species enjoyed. They wanted to be treated as equals. The Krell representative, a creature that looked like a giant serpent with 6 arms, rose from its seat. Its name was Veshkor, and it had led the opposition against humanity's request. The Krell had been council members for over 3,000 years. They considered themselves the guardians of galactic civilization. Veshkor's voice echoed through the chamber. The translation device in Jake's ear converted the hissing sounds into English. The vote is complete. 38 species have voted against granting humanity full membership status. 4 species voted in favor. The motion fails. Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his face calm. 200 years. Humanity had given 200 years of service. They had fought wars to protect Council worlds. They had shared their technology freely. They had asked for almost nothing in return except a chance to prove themselves worthy. Lisa Park sat in the gallery above the main floor. She commanded 3 battle groups in the Earth Defense Fleet. Her ships patrolled the dangerous sectors that most alien species avoided. Pirates, smugglers, and hostile forces all learned to fear the sight of human warships. The humans fought with a determination that other species found disturbing. She watched Jake standing alone at the podium. They had known this might happen. The council had delayed the vote 3 times already. Each time they found a new excuse. Humanity was too young, too aggressive, too unpredictable. The reasons changed. But the message stayed the same. Humans were not welcome as equals. Veshkor continued speaking. The Council recognizes humanity's contributions. However, we believe another century of probationary status is appropriate. Perhaps 2 centuries. Your species must demonstrate greater stability before full membership can be considered. Jake looked up at the Krell representative. Greater stability, he repeated. We have maintained peace with every Council species for 200 years. We have honored every agreement. We have sacrificed our people to defend Council interests. What more do you require? A Frelix delegate, a being that resembled a floating jellyfish, pulsed with colors that the translator rendered as words. Your species shows too much emotion. You form attachments too quickly. You make decisions based on feeling rather than logic. These traits make you unsuitable for full Council membership. Lisa clenched her fists. The Frelix had needed human help just 5 years ago. A plague had swept through their colony worlds. Human doctors had worked around the clock to find a cure. They had saved billions of Frelix lives. Now the Frelix voted against humanity with no sign of gratitude. Jake pulled a small device from his pocket. It was a communication pad connected to every human outpost in the galaxy. He had hoped he would not need to use it today. He typed a single code word and pressed send. The message went out across light years in seconds, reaching every human ship, every human station, every human colony. The word was Exodus. Lieutenant Kevin Walsh stood behind Jake. He was young, only 28, but he had served as Jake's aide for 3 years. He saw the message go out and understood what it meant. Every human in the galaxy had been briefed on what Exodus meant. The contingency plan had been prepared years ago, just in case this day came. Jake turned back to face the council. I want to thank the 4 species who voted with humanity today. The Pelos, the Tarn, the Marathi, and the Kess. We will remember your friendship. He paused and looked around the chamber. Hundreds of alien eyes watched him. Some showed curiosity. Others showed indifference. A few showed what might have been sympathy. Effective immediately, humanity is withdrawing from all agreements with the Galactic Council. All human military forces will return to Earth space. All human trade vessels will cease operations in Council territory. All human diplomatic staff will depart within 72 hours. All human technology currently on loan to Council species must be returned or disabled within 30 days. The chamber erupted into noise. Delegates shouted questions in dozens of languages. The translation system struggled to keep up with the chaos. Veshkor raised several of its arms, calling for order. Ambassador Morrison, you cannot be serious. This is an emotional outburst. Take time to reconsider. Jake shook his head. This is not an emotional decision. This is the result of 200 years of careful consideration. Humanity offered friendship to the Council. We offered our strength, our knowledge, and our loyalty. You have rejected that offer. We accept your decision and will respect it by removing ourselves from Council affairs entirely. A Vryn delegate, a species known for their trading prowess, stood up. But the trade routes, human ships carry 70% of the goods through the Outer Rim sectors. Who will maintain those routes? That is no longer humanity's concern, Jake replied. His voice stayed level and calm. We maintain those routes as a service to the Council. Since we are not worthy of full membership, we clearly should not be involved in Council commerce. Lisa watched from above as the reality of the situation began to sink in. The Council had become dependent on human services without even realizing it. For 2 centuries, humans had quietly taken on the dangerous jobs, the difficult tasks, the work that other species found beneath them or too risky. The Council had accepted all of it as their due, never understanding what they were receiving. Jake gathered his papers and stepped away from the podium. The human delegation stood as one. They filed out of the chamber in perfect order. No one shouted, no one argued, no one even looked back at the Council members who were now calling out questions and demands. Kevin followed Jake out into the corridor. Sir, the evacuation orders are being implemented now. Fleet Command estimates full withdrawal will take 90 days. Make it 60, Jake said. I want every human out of Council space as quickly as possible. What about the defense platforms protecting Council headquarters? We built those. Jake stopped walking and turned to face his aide. We dismantle them. Every piece of human technology comes home. Every weapon system, every shield generator, every computer core. When we leave nothing behind. They walked through the corridors of the massive station. Other species moved past them, going about their daily business. None of them understood yet what had just happened. They would learn soon enough. Jake reached the docking bay where the human shuttle waited. He looked back one last time at the Council station. So much hope had been invested in this place. So many humans had believed that joining the galactic community would be humanity's greatest achievement. Instead, they had learned a hard lesson. Respect could not be earned by service alone. Sometimes the only way to maintain dignity was to walk away. The shuttle door closed behind him. Within minutes, they were moving away from the station. Jake looked out the viewport at the stars beyond. Earth was 3 weeks away at maximum speed. By the time he arrived home, the Great Withdrawal would be well underway. The Council had made their choice. Now humanity would make theirs. They would walk away silently, with no threats and no anger. They would simply leave the Council to face whatever came next alone. It was the most human response possible. Quiet dignity in the face of rejection. The Council had called humans too emotional. They would soon learn that human emotion included something the Council had forgotten: pride. Captain Amy Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the destroyer Valiant, watching the tactical display. 300 human ships were pulling back from their positions along the outer rim. These vessels had patrolled the most dangerous regions of Council space for decades. Now they were going home. "Status report," Amy said to her communications officer. "All ships are responding to recall orders, Captain. The carrier groups are gathering at Rally Point 7. Transport ships are loading personnel from the ground stations. We estimate full evacuation in 43 days. Amy nodded. The military withdrawal was proceeding faster than anyone had expected. Human efficiency was something the Council had always taken for granted. They were about to learn what the absence of that efficiency meant. A message came through from the Zalari homeworld. The Zalari were a peaceful species who relied entirely on Council protection. Human battle groups had defended their worlds from raiders for over a century. Now those protectors were leaving. The Zalari ambassador's message was desperate. "Please, Captain Rodriguez, we need your ships. The Corvan pirates will attack as soon as they learn you are gone. Our people cannot defend themselves." Amy felt sympathy for the Zalari, but orders were orders. "Ambassador, I recommend you petition the Council for protection. That is no longer a human responsibility." "But the Council voted against you. Surely you can stay just until other arrangements are made?" "The Council made their position clear," Amy replied. "Humanity is not worthy of equal status. Therefore, we have no business making decisions about Council security. I am sure the Council will provide adequate protection." She ended the transmission. It hurt to abandon people who had never done anything wrong to humanity. But staying would hurt more. It would mean accepting that humans were somehow lesser beings, suited only to serve without recognition. Brandon Cole oversaw the evacuation of Zenith Station, the massive defensive platform that humans had built to protect Council headquarters. He had worked on this station for 12 years. He knew every corridor, every system, every backup circuit. The station represented the best of human engineering. Now, he was tearing it all down. Cole to engineering teams. "Begin removal of the primary weapon arrays. I want every plasma cannon disconnected and loaded onto the transports. Nothing gets left behind." His chief engineer, a woman named Helen Grant, appeared on his screen. "Sir, removing the weapons will leave the station defenseless. Council headquarters will be vulnerable." "That is correct," Brandon said, "and that is their problem. We built this station as a gift. We maintained it at our own expense. We died building it. 17 good people lost their lives during construction. The Council accepted our sacrifice without even saying thank you. Now they can protect themselves." The work continued for days. Human engineers removed everything. The shield generators came out first, then the weapons systems. The power cores were disconnected and hauled away. Even the advanced sensors were stripped out. When the humans finished, Zenith Station was just an empty shell of metal floating in space. The Krell sent engineers to inspect the station. They discovered to their horror that without human systems, the station was worthless. The remaining equipment was incompatible with Krell technology. It would take years and billions of credits to make the station functional again. Nicole Hayes commanded the cargo ship Dakota Wind. She had hauled freight through Council space for 8 years. Her ship carried medical supplies, food, and manufacturing equipment to frontier worlds. She took the dangerous routes that other traders avoided because the pay was bad and the risks were high. The Vrin Consortium contacted her with an offer. They would triple her usual pay if she continued her routes for just 6 more months. They promised that better arrangements could be made during that time. Nicole listened to the offer carefully. Triple pay was tempting. She could use that money, but money was not the issue here. "I appreciate the offer," she told the Vrin trader, "but I am taking my ship home. The Council has made it clear that humans are not good enough to be equal members. So I figure we are not good enough to risk our lives for their economy either." But Captain Hayes, you have always been reliable. We have done business together for years. And in all those years, did you ever speak up for humanity at the council? Did you ever suggest that maybe we deserved equal treatment? Nicole waited, but the Vryn had no answer. That is what I thought. Good luck finding someone else to haul your freight through the Corvin sector. You will need it. The withdrawal continued across every sector of council space. Human doctors packed up their equipment and left plague-stricken worlds. Human engineers abandoned half-finished terraforming projects. Human teachers at the academy on Frelix Prime boarded transports and departed. Human mediators walked away from peace negotiations they had been conducting for years. Every human left, not just military and diplomatic personnel. Every merchant, every scientist, every civilian who had made a life in council territory. They all received the same order. Come home. Bring nothing but what belongs to you. Leave everything else behind. The council began to panic. Messages flooded Earth requesting clarification. This could not be permanent. Surely humanity would reconsider. Perhaps certain arrangements could be made. Special status. Observer privileges. Something. The response from Earth was always the same. Polite, brief, and final. Humanity had withdrawn from council affairs. There was nothing more to discuss. Peter Grant was the last human on Tau Ceti 7. He had spent 6 years managing the terraforming project that would turn this barren world into a paradise. The work was 90% complete. Another year would finish it. The Frelix, who would inherit the world, were already planning their first settlements. Peter handed over the access codes to the Frelix engineers who were taking over. They looked confused as they studied the documentation. "This is very complex," one of them said. "We do not understand half of these systems. Can you stay just a few more weeks to train us properly?" Peter shook his head. "I have given you all the documentation. Everything you need to know is in those files. If you follow the procedures exactly, you will be fine. But what if something goes wrong? What if we encounter a problem that is not covered in the documentation?" "Then you will have to figure it out yourselves," Peter said. "That is what humans do. We encounter problems and we solve them. I am sure you can learn to do the same." He left on the last transport. Looking down at Tau Ceti 7 from orbit, he felt a sense of loss. That world could have been beautiful. Now it would probably remain a half-finished project for decades. The Frelix did not have the experience or the creativity to complete it. They could follow instructions, but they could not adapt when things went wrong. And in terraforming, things always went wrong. Admiral Kevin Walsh, promoted after the withdrawal began, stood in the command center on Earth watching the data feeds. Ship after ship reported successful evacuation. Base after base went dark as the last humans departed. The Great Withdrawal was ahead of schedule. "Admiral, we are receiving reports of increased pirate activity in the sectors we have evacuated," an intelligence officer reported. "The raiders are moving in as soon as our ships pull out." Kevin nodded. That was predictable. Human warships had kept the peace for so long that criminal elements had almost forgotten those sectors existed. Now, with the humans gone, it was open season. "Not our problem anymore," Kevin said. "The Council can deal with it." "Sir, the Zalari are reporting 3 attacks in the last week. They are taking heavy casualties." Kevin felt his jaw tighten. The Zalari were innocent victims in all of this, but he could not let sympathy override the larger principle. "Send them our condolences. Recommend they petition the Council for military assistance." "The Council does not have forces available, sir. They are still trying to reorganize their military command structure." Then they should have thought about that before they voted against humanity. The weeks passed. The withdrawal continued, and slowly, very slowly, the Council began to understand what they had lost. It was not just the military protection, it was not just the trade routes. It was not just the technology, it was the humans themselves, the species who could be counted on to show up when things got difficult. The species who would take on jobs that others avoided. The species who would sacrifice their own comfort to help others. The species who would keep their word even when it cost them. For 200 years, humans had been the glue holding the council together. They had filled 1,000 small gaps that other species did not even notice. They had made things work through sheer determination and creativity. They had asked for almost nothing while giving nearly everything. Now they were gone, and the council was discovering just how much they had depended on people they had considered unworthy of equal status. The last human transport left council space exactly 57 days after Jake Morrison walked out of the council chamber. Not a single human remained behind. They had removed themselves completely, taking with them their ships, their technology, and their willingness to help. The silence they left behind was louder than any threat could have been. The Huracan swarm came from the galactic east like a storm of locusts. Millions of insectoid warriors moved through space in vast organic ships. They had been testing council defenses for years, always driven back by rapid human response forces. Those forces were gone now. The first world to fall was Trellis Minor, a Zalari colony with 2 billion inhabitants. The attack came without warning. The defense satellites, old Krell models that barely functioned, fired a few shots before being overwhelmed. The Huracan landed in waves, and what followed was a massacre. The council emergency meeting was chaos. Representatives shouted at each other in a dozen languages. The Zalari ambassador wept openly as reports of the slaughter came in. 3 billion dead in the first week. The Huracan were not interested in conquest. They wanted food, and they ate anything made of meat. Veshkor of the Krell called for order. We must mobilize our combined fleets. The Huracan must be stopped before they reach the core worlds. What fleets? Demanded the Frelix delegate. We disbanded most of our military 40 years ago. The humans were handling our defense. We have maybe 300 warships total. The Huracan have thousands. The Vryn representative spoke up. We must contact Earth, request their immediate assistance, offer them whatever they want. Veshkor hesitated. Pride warred with necessity. Finally, necessity won. Very well. Prepare a message to the human government. Tell them the council requests military assistance against the Huracan invasion. Offer full membership status and a formal apology. The message was sent. The response came back within 6 hours. It was brief and terribly polite. The government of Earth acknowledges receipt of your message. We regret that we cannot provide military assistance at this time. Humanity is not a member of the Galactic Council, and therefore has no obligation to involve itself in Council military affairs. We wish you success in your endeavors. Veshkor read the message 3 times, each time hoping the words would change. They did not. Earth had refused. The humans were not coming to save the Council this time. The Huracan took 4 more worlds in the next month. The Council forces fought bravely, but they were outmatched. Species that had forgotten how to wage war tried to remember in the middle of a crisis. Coordination was terrible. Ships from different species could not communicate properly. Tactics that worked for one species failed for another. The Council military was a disaster. Meanwhile, the Council economy was collapsing from within. Human traders had maintained networks that connected thousands of worlds. They had operated on trust, making deals with a handshake and delivering goods even when payment was delayed. Other species had found this practice strange, but convenient. Now those networks were gone. Frontier colonies stopped receiving supplies. The Vryn tried to fill the gap, but they refused to operate without advance payment and ironclad contracts. Many colonies could not afford their rates. Food shipments stopped. Medical supplies ran out. Power generators broke down without replacement parts. The colony of Farah Prime sent desperate messages. They were a mining world that produced rare metals essential for starship construction. Their population was 30,000 humans and aliens. The nearest supply depot was 6 weeks away through a region called the Narrows, a dangerous asteroid field where pirates hunted freely. The Vryn refused to send ships through the Narrows. The profit margin was too low for the risk. The Council tried to organize a military escort, but they needed every available ship to fight the Hraken. Farah Prime would have to wait. After 8 weeks without supplies, the reactor on Farah Prime failed. Without power, the life support systems shut down. All 30,000 colonists died within 2 days. The Council held a moment of silence in their honor. It changed nothing. The plague on Zalari Core was getting worse. The disease had been contained 3 years earlier when human doctors developed a vaccine. But the vaccine required regular boosters, and the production facilities had all been on human-run stations. Without the boosters, the disease was coming back. Dr. Laura Mitchell, Earth's chief medical officer, received a personal plea from the Zalari Minister of Health. They needed help. Billions would die without the vaccine. Laura studied the request carefully. She felt genuine sympathy for the Zalari. They had done nothing wrong except fail to stand up for humanity when it mattered. But she had her orders. "I am sorry," she told the Zalari minister over the video link. "Earth's medical resources are fully committed to serving our allies in the Terran Compact. We cannot spare the personnel or equipment to assist the Council." "But Dr. Mitchell, we will all die. Surely you can help on humanitarian grounds." Laura took a deep breath. For 200 years, humans provided assistance on humanitarian grounds. We asked only to be treated as equals. The Council decided we were not worthy. I cannot, in good conscience, send human medical personnel to risk their lives for people who consider them inferior. "We made a mistake! The Council knows that now." "Yes," Laura agreed. "You did make a mistake, and now you must live with the consequences of that mistake. I am truly sorry, but we will not help you." The transmission ended. Laura sat alone in her office for a long time afterward. She had just condemned billions of beings to death, but staying silent would have condemned something worse. It would have told every human that their dignity had no value, that they should accept being treated as servants forever. The technology crisis hit the Council even harder than the military or economic problems. For 2 centuries, human engineers had been the troubleshooters of galactic civilization. When something broke, you called a human. When a project stalled, you brought in a human consultant. When innovation was needed, you hired a human team. Humans had a gift for creative problem-solving. They approached challenges from angles that other species never considered. They could look at a failing system and see 3 different ways to fix it. They could adapt on the fly when conditions changed. They could make things work with whatever resources were available. That creativity was gone now. The great projects across Council space began to fail. The terraforming efforts stalled. The new fusion reactor designs could not be completed. The experimental propulsion systems that promised faster-than-light travel fell apart during testing. The Frelix engineers on Tau Ceti 7 followed the procedures Peter Grant had left behind. Everything went fine for 3 months. Then the atmospheric processors started producing too much oxygen. The levels were rising toward dangerous territory. The Frelix studied the documentation frantically. There was nothing about this problem in the files. They tried the standard corrections, but nothing worked. The oxygen levels kept climbing. Within 2 weeks, the atmosphere would be toxic. They sent an urgent message to Earth requesting help. The response was the same as always: polite, brief, final. Earth could not provide assistance to non-allied worlds. The Frelix had to abandon Tau Ceti 7. 6 years of work wasted. Billions of credits lost. The world that should have been a paradise remained a toxic, half-finished failure. The Council tried everything to bring humanity back. They offered trade deals. They offered technology exchanges. They offered to make Jake Morrison the chairman of the council itself. Every offer was declined with the same quiet politeness. The Terran Compact, meanwhile, was thriving. The four species who had voted with humanity were experiencing a golden age. The Pelos military trained alongside human forces and learned tactics that made them 3 times more effective. The Tarn received human medical technology that doubled their lifespan. The Mirathi joined human trading networks, and their economy grew by 40% in the first year. The Kess, the smallest species, received human protection and could finally develop their worlds without fear of invasion. These 4 species were treated as complete equals by humanity. There were no probationary periods, no hierarchy, no tests to prove their worth. The humans simply welcomed them as partners and friends. Word spread through the galaxy. The species suffering under council incompetence began to look at the Terran Compact with envy. They had rejected humanity. They had called humans too emotional, too aggressive, too unpredictable. Now they watched as those same humans built something better with the few species who had shown them respect. The Hrakan swarm controlled 23 worlds now. The council forces had stopped retreating, but they could not advance. The war had reached a stalemate. Billions were dead. Trillions of credits were spent. And the fighting would continue for years unless something changed. Veshkor stood before the council and admitted defeat. We cannot win this war without help. We cannot maintain our economy without human traders. We cannot complete our technological projects without human engineers. We need them. They will not come, said the Frelix delegate bitterly. We insulted them. We called them unworthy. Why would they help us now? Pride, Veshkor said. We must swallow our pride and beg them to return. Offer them everything. Make them partners, not members. Give them control if that is what they want. We have no choice. The vote was unanimous. The council would send a formal delegation to Earth. They would apologize, offer reparations, and request that humanity rejoin the council on any terms they wanted. The delegation was led by Veshkor himself. It included representatives from all the major species. They brought gifts. They prepared speeches. They practiced their apologies. The journey to Earth took 3 weeks. During that time, 2 more council worlds fell to the Hrakan. The plague on Zalari Core killed another 1 billion people. The economy continued to crumble. The delegation arrived at Earth expecting resistance. They expected anger. They expected demands. Instead, they received courtesy. President Laura Chen welcomed them to Geneva and listened to their offer with polite attention. When they finished, she asked one simple question. Why should we believe you? 2 years ago, you called us unworthy. Nothing about humanity has changed since then. What has changed is that you need us. You are not offering equality because you respect us. You are offering it because you are desperate. Veshkor could not deny it. The truth was obvious to everyone in the room. President Chen stood and looked at each delegate in turn. Humanity appreciates your offer, but we have moved on. We have built something new with our true friends. We have no interest in rejoining an organization that treated us as servants for 200 years. I wish you the best in resolving your current difficulties. The meeting was over. The delegation returned to council space with nothing. Humanity had refused them, not with anger, not with demands, just with quiet, dignified refusal. The council finally understood. They had lost something precious, and they would never get it back. 3 years had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Council. The changes were visible everywhere. Council space was no longer the peaceful, prosperous civilization it had been. War, disease, and economic collapse had transformed it into something desperate and dark. The Hrakan swarm had been stopped, but the cost was terrible. 15 worlds were gone completely, their populations consumed. Another 30 worlds were damaged beyond repair. The combined council forces had finally learned to fight together through sheer necessity. Billions of lives had been the price of that education. Admiral Kevin Walsh studied the intelligence reports from Council territory. Earth maintained observation stations along the border, watching events unfold without interference. The data was sobering. The Council's military strength was a fraction of what it had been when humans were involved. Their economy was fragmented. Their technological advancement had stopped completely. "Sir, we are receiving another request from the Zalari," his communications officer reported. "They are asking if we will reconsider providing medical assistance." Kevin shook his head. "Standard response. We wish them well but cannot assist at this time." The Zalari plague had killed 7 billion people over the past 3 years. The vaccine that human doctors had developed required production facilities that the Zalari could not build on their own. They tried, but they lacked the expertise. Every attempt ended in failure. The Vrin Consortium was bankrupt. For 1,000 years, they had been the richest species in the galaxy. Their trading networks had spanned every sector. Now those networks were shattered. They had tried to replace human traders, but they discovered too late that humans had been running the most dangerous and least profitable routes at a loss. The humans did it because those routes connected isolated colonies that needed help. The Vrin would only operate where profit was guaranteed. So the isolated colonies starved, and the economy collapsed. Brandon Cole, now the chief engineer for the Terran Compact, received daily messages from desperate council species. They needed help with their failing technology. Reactors were breaking down. Life support systems were failing. Terraforming projects were producing toxic atmospheres instead of breathable air. He read each message carefully, then filed it away. The problems were all solvable. A human engineer could fix any of them in a few days. But human engineers were busy now helping the compact species. The Pelos were building new shipyards. The Tarn were constructing medical research facilities. The Marathi were developing new agricultural technology. The Kess were finally creating a real infrastructure on their homeworld. Every human engineer, every human doctor, every human trader was working to help species who had shown humanity respect. There was no time or resources left for those who had voted them unworthy. Nicole Hayes commanded a new ship now. The Dakota Wind had been retired, replaced by the much larger Freedom's Call. She hauled freight through compact space, connecting the growing alliance of worlds. The routes were safe, the pay was fair, and the people she helped appreciated her work. Sometimes she passed through space near the old council territories. Her sensors picked up distress signals from colonies that had once thrived. She could help them. Her cargo holds had the supplies they needed, but she kept flying. Those colonies had supported a system that treated humans as inferior. Now they could survive without human charity. The Council made one final attempt to bring humanity back. They sent not delegates, but refugees. 3 ships carrying Zalari civilians arrived at Earth orbit without permission. The ships were damaged, their life support failing. They had fled their plague-stricken world and come to Earth seeking mercy. President Laura Chen faced an impossible choice. These were innocent people, children and elderly. They had not voted against humanity. They just wanted to live. But accepting them would send a message that humanity could be manipulated through sympathy. She authorized emergency medical treatment. The refugees were brought to Earth's orbital stations. Human doctors treated them for the plague. Human engineers repaired their ships. But when they were healthy again, Laura gave them a choice. "You can return to council space," she told their leader, an elderly Zalari named Kesava. "Or you can request asylum in the Terran Compact. But if you choose asylum, you must understand what that means. You will be leaving your people behind. You will become citizens of the Compact, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails." Kesava was silent for a long moment. "If we return, we will die. The plague is everywhere. There is no vaccine." "I know," Laura said. That is your choice to make. We will not force you either way. The refugees chose asylum, all 3 ships full of them. They were the first council species to formally abandon their own civilization and join the compact. They would not be the last. The Frelics sent a secret delegation to Earth. They met with Brandon Cole in a private facility in Colorado. The 3 Frelics engineers looked exhausted and desperate. "We need your help," their leader admitted. "Our civilization is failing. Without human assistance, we cannot maintain our technology. We cannot finish our projects. We are slowly dying." Brandon listened without expression. "Why come to me? Take your request to President Chen through proper diplomatic channels." "We did. She refused to meet with us. She said the Frelics voted against humanity and must accept the consequences." "She is correct," Brandon said. "You did vote against us. You said we were too emotional to be equal members of the council. So why should we help you now?" The Frelics engineer's voice shook. "Because we were wrong. We did not understand what you were doing for us. We took your help for granted. We thought you needed the council more than we needed you. We were foolish and arrogant." "Yes," Brandon agreed. "You were. But recognition of a mistake does not erase it. The Frelics helped create the system that treated humanity as servants for 200 years. You benefited from our labor while denying us respect. I am sorry for your situation, but it is not my problem anymore." The delegation left Earth with nothing. Word of their failed mission spread through council space. Species began to understand that humanity would not be swayed by apologies or desperate pleas. The humans had moved on. Jake Morrison lived quietly on his farm in Montana. He raised cattle and grew wheat. He spent evenings with his family and watched the stars at night. He was no longer an ambassador, he was just a farmer. But messages still found him. The Pelos ambassador visited him one afternoon. They sat on Jake's porch drinking coffee while the sun set over the mountains. The Pelos, a species that resembled tall, thin birds, spoke with genuine warmth. "Ambassador Morrison, I wanted to thank you personally. Our people have flourished under the compact. We have learned so much from humanity. Your friendship has been worth more than 1,000 council memberships." Jake smiled. "We never wanted subjects or servants. We wanted friends, partners. That is what the compact is built on." "The council species are suffering," the Pelos said carefully. "I know they wronged humanity, but watching them die is difficult. Do you ever regret walking away?" Jake considered the question. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that the council could not see past their prejudices. But I do not regret the decision itself. Sometimes you have to walk away from people who do not respect you. Staying would have destroyed us slowly. We would have spent another century trying to prove ourselves worthy to beings who had already decided we were not. That is no way to live. What do you think will happen to the council?" "They will survive or they will not," Jake said. "That is their choice to make. We offered them friendship. They rejected it. We cannot force them to accept what they do not want." The Terran Compact continued to grow. 2 more species requested admission. The Sovari and the Brent, both former council members, formally withdrew from council space and joined the compact. They brought their people, their ships, and their technology. They were welcomed as equals. The council watched this exodus with growing fear. The best and brightest species were leaving. Those who remained were the ones too proud to admit their mistake or too weak to make the journey to compact space. The council was becoming a shadow of itself. Veshkor of the Krell stood before what remained of the council assembly. Only 28 species still attended regularly. 15 others had left or been destroyed. The grand chamber felt empty. "We must face reality," Veshkor said. His voice had lost its arrogance. 3 years of failure had humbled him. "The Galactic Council as we knew it is finished. We built our civilization on the assumption that we were superior to younger species. We used humanity's strength while denying them respect. Now we are paying the price for that arrogance. What do you propose? Asked the Frelix delegate. Dissolution. We formally dissolve the council. Those species who wish to continue working together can form new agreements. Those who wish to seek admission to the Terran Compact can do so. But we stop pretending that the council still exists as a functioning government. The vote was not even close. 24 species voted to dissolve. Only 4 voted to continue. The Galactic Council, which had existed for over 5,000 years, ended not with a grand battle or a dramatic crisis. It ended with a quiet vote acknowledging defeat. The final session was attended by observers from the Terran Compact. Admiral Kevin Walsh represented humanity. He watched as the council formally dissolved itself. When it was over, several former council members approached him. Will the Compact accept our applications for membership? The Vryn delegate asked. Kevin looked at them without emotion. That is for President Chen and the Compact Assembly to decide. You will need to demonstrate that you understand what the Compact stands for. Equality, respect, mutual support. These are not just words, they are principles we live by. If you can accept that, then perhaps there is a place for you. If you cannot, then you should look elsewhere. We treated humanity badly, the Vryn admitted. We know that. Can we earn forgiveness? That is the wrong question, Kevin said. You cannot earn forgiveness for 200 years of disrespect, but you can start treating people as equals from this day forward. You can build new relationships based on mutual respect. The past cannot be changed, but the future is not yet written. He left the chamber for the last time. Behind him, the former council members began the long process of deciding what they would become. Some would seek admission to the Compact. Others would form their own alliances. Some would simply fade into history. Humanity had walked away 3 years ago. The council had learned too late what they lost. Now they would have to decide if they could change enough to deserve a second chance. 5 years had passed since the day Jake Morrison walked out of the council chamber. The galaxy looked completely different now. The old Galactic Council was gone, dissolved into history. In its place, new alliances formed and fell. Some species thrived, others barely survived. The Terran Compact had grown to 15 member species. Each one had been carefully evaluated before admission. The humans asked only one question during the application process. Can you treat all members as equals? Species that answered yes with genuine commitment were welcomed. Those that could not accept true equality were politely declined. Captain Nicole Hayes stood on the bridge of her new command, the colony ship New Horizon. She was not hauling freight anymore. This ship carried something more important: hope. They were heading to Velis Prime, a world destroyed during the HFY War. The Velis had voted against humanity 5 years ago. They had considered humans too aggressive, too dangerous. Now their world was a wasteland. Billions had died during the HFY invasion. The survivors lived in refugee camps with barely enough food and water. Admiral Kevin Walsh had authorized this mission over strong objections from several Compact members. The Vryn, now junior members of the Compact themselves, argued that the Velis deserved their fate. They had rejected humanity and should not receive help. Kevin's response had been simple and direct. We do not help people because they deserve it. We help because it is the right thing to do. The Velis made a mistake 5 years ago. Their children should not starve because their parents were foolish. Nicole's ship carried food, medicine, construction equipment, and engineers. Everything needed to rebuild a civilization. As they entered orbit around Velis Prime, she could see the devastation below. Cities were burned. Farmlands were destroyed. The Rockin had eaten everything. The Velis leaders met the human delegation with tears in their eyes. Their president, a being named Telvon, could barely speak. Why? He finally managed to ask. We voted against you. We called you unworthy. Why would you help us? Nicole looked at the destroyed world below. Because 5 years ago, we learned an important lesson. Walking away with dignity is powerful, but mercy is more powerful. We walked away from the council because staying was killing us, but that does not mean we stopped caring about others. We have nothing to offer you in return, Telvon said. No payment, no trade goods, nothing. We do not want payment, Nicole replied. We want you to survive. We want your children to have a future. That is enough. The relief effort took months. Human engineers worked alongside Velis survivors to rebuild cities. Human doctors treated injuries and diseases. Human farmers taught new agricultural techniques. The work was hard, the hours were long, and the conditions were terrible. But the humans never complained. They just worked. A young Velis girl approached Nicole one day. She could not have been more than 8 years old. She held out a small flower, one of the first plants to grow in the restored farmland. Thank you for saving us, the girl said. Nicole took the flower carefully. You are welcome. But remember something. We came to help because it was right, not because you deserved it. When you grow up, I hope you will do the same for others. Help people not because they earned it, but because they need it. The girl nodded seriously. I will. I promise. Word of the human relief mission spread quickly through the former council territories. Other species watched in amazement. The Velis had rejected humanity. They had no alliance with the Compact. They had no strategic value. Yet humans came to help them anyway. It challenged everything the old council had believed about humanity. Humans were not aggressive. They were protective. They were not too emotional. They were compassionate. They were not unpredictable. They simply refused to follow the cold calculations that other species considered normal. 6 more species requested admission to the Terran Compact after the Velis relief effort. They had seen what humanity really was. Not servants seeking approval, not warriors seeking conquest, just people trying to build something better than what existed before. Dr. Laura Mitchell traveled to Zalari Core for the first time in 5 years. The plague was finally ending. The Zalari had managed to develop their own vaccine after years of failure. Billions had died in the process. Their population was a fraction of what it had been. The Zalari Minister of Health met Laura at the spaceport. She looked old and tired. The past 5 years had aged her 20. Dr. Mitchell, thank you for coming. I know we have no right to ask for your time. Laura shook her head. You asked for help 5 years ago. I said no. That was the right decision at the time. But the situation has changed. The council is gone. The old hierarchies are broken. If you want our help now, we can discuss it. What would you require in return? Nothing, Laura said. Medical assistance is not a bargaining chip. It is a moral obligation. If the Zalari want to join the Compact as equals, we can discuss that separately. But medical help is freely given to anyone who needs it. The Zalari minister started to cry. We were so wrong about you. We thought you were weak because you helped others without demanding payment. We thought you were inferior because you showed emotion. We did not understand that your compassion was strength, not weakness. Many species made that mistake, Laura said gently. The important thing is learning from it. Jake Morrison's granddaughter, a bright girl named Casey, sat with him on the porch one evening. She was studying galactic history in school. Her teacher had assigned a report on the fall of the Galactic Council. Grandpa, my teacher says you destroyed the council. She says humanity could have saved them if you had stayed. Jake looked at his granddaughter carefully. What do you think? Casey considered the question. I think the council destroyed itself. You just stopped holding it up. That is correct. We did not destroy anything. We simply stopped sacrificing ourselves for people who did not respect us. There is an important difference, but a lot of people died. The plague, the war, the economic collapse. Could you have prevented that? Maybe, Jake admitted. If we had stayed, if we had continued protecting people who treated us as servants, we might have prevented some of those deaths. But at what cost? How long should we have accepted being treated as inferior? Another 100 years? 1,000? When would it have been acceptable for us to demand respect? Casey nodded slowly. So you walked away to protect yourself, not to hurt them. Exactly. We did not leave to punish the council. We left because staying was destroying us. The council had a choice. They could have treated us as equals. They chose not to. The consequences that followed were the result of their choice, not ours. Do you think they have learned their lesson? Jake smiled. Some have, others have not. But that is true of any group. The important thing is that humanity learned our lesson. We learned that respect cannot be earned through service alone. We learned that walking away with dignity is sometimes the only option. And we learned that building something new is better than trying to fix something broken. The Terran Compact Assembly met on Earth to discuss the future. Representatives from 15 species filled the chamber. Unlike the old council, there were no tiers of membership. Every species had equal voting rights. Every voice was heard with the same weight. President Laura Chen addressed the assembly. 5 years ago, humanity walked away from a system that treated us as inferior. Today, we have built something better. The compact is not perfect. We still have disagreements. We still make mistakes. But we face our problems as equals. That makes all the difference. The Pelos ambassador stood to speak. The old council failed because it was built on hierarchy. They believed some species were naturally superior to others. The compact succeeds because we believe in equality. This is humanity's greatest gift to us, not your military strength or your technology, your belief that all people deserve respect. The vote that day was to establish a relief fund for former council species. Any world that needed help could request assistance. The compact would provide it without demanding anything in return. Some assembly members objected. Why help species that had rejected them? Admiral Kevin Walsh gave the response. Because we are better than they were. The council helped only those who served them. We help those who need it. That is what separates us from what came before. The vote passed with strong support. The compact would extend help to anyone who needed it, ally or not. Brandon Cole supervised the construction of a new space station in compact territory. This one would be bigger than anything humanity had built before. It would serve as a research center where all compact species could work together on scientific advancement. A Krell engineer worked alongside him. The Krell had been one of the last species to join the compact. They had resisted for years, their pride preventing them from accepting that they needed help. Finally, hunger and desperation had forced them to request admission. Brandon, I must ask you something, the Krell said. Do humans hate us? The Krell led the vote against humanity 5 years ago. We were the primary voice calling you unworthy. Yet you work beside me as if none of that happened. Brandon stopped working and looked at the Krell directly. I do not hate you. Hate requires caring about the past. I care about the future. You made mistakes, you caused harm, but you also requested admission to the compact, which means you accepted our terms. Equality, respect, mutual support. If you truly believe in those principles now, then the past does not matter. Just like that, 5 years of conflict erased? Not erased, Brandon corrected, but set aside. The question is not what you did 5 years ago. The question is what you will do tomorrow. Be a good ally. Treat others with respect. Help when help is needed. Do those things, and we will have no problems. The Krell was silent for a long moment. Then he returned to work. There was nothing more to say. Nicole Hayes retired from space service at the age of 55. She had spent 30 years flying cargo ships through the most dangerous regions of space. She had survived pirate attacks, equipment failures, and one memorable incident involving a rockin' scout ship. She had earned her rest, but retirement did not mean inactivity. She became an instructor at the Compact Academy, teaching young traders from every species how to operate in difficult conditions. Her students came from a dozen different worlds, but she treated them all the same. The most important rule, she told her class, is to keep your word. If you promise to deliver cargo, you deliver it, even if the pay is bad. Even if the route is dangerous, even if it costs you money, your word is worth more than any amount of credits. A young Vrin student raised his hand. But Teacher Hayes, my father says that profit is the most important thing. He says only fools work at a loss. Nicole smiled. Your father is entitled to his opinion. But let me tell you about human traders. For 200 years, we ran routes at a loss. We delivered goods to isolated colonies that could barely pay. We took risks that made no financial sense. Do you know why? The student shook his head. Because those colonies needed help. Because keeping our word mattered more than making money. Because we believed in something bigger than profit. That is why the council economy collapsed when we left. They lost people who would do the right thing even when it was not profitable. The student thought about this. Did you make money eventually? Some did, others did not. But we all earned something more valuable than money. We earned respect. We earned friendships. We earned the right to look at ourselves in the mirror and feel proud. Your father can keep his profits. I kept my dignity. 10 years after humanity walked away from the Galactic Council, Jake Morrison died peacefully on his farm in Montana. He was 86 years old. The funeral was attended by representatives from every compact species. Even the Krell sent a delegation, led by Veshikor himself. Veshikor stood before the grave and spoke words that few Krell had ever spoken. I am sorry. I led the vote that rejected humanity. I believed my species was superior. I was wrong. Jake Morrison showed me what true leadership looks like, not demanding respect, but earning it through action, not seeking power, but serving others. He was a better person than I will ever be. The galaxy is lesser for his passing. Casey Morrison, now a young woman studying diplomacy, accepted the condolences with grace. Her grandfather had taught her well. She knew that his legacy was not the anger he could have felt or the revenge he could have taken. His legacy was the quiet dignity of walking away and building something better. The Terran Compact continued to grow and thrive. By the 15th anniversary of its founding, it included 23 species and protected over 100 worlds. It was not perfect. There were still disputes and disagreements, but they were solved through discussion and compromise, not through hierarchy and force. The old council territories had fragmented into dozens of small alliances. Some thrived, others struggled, but all of them had learned the lesson that humanity taught. Respect could not be demanded. It had to be earned through action. And sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was walk away with dignity and let others face the consequences of their choices. The humans had walked away silently, leaving the council to face the consequences alone. In doing so, they had changed the galaxy forever, not through war or threats, but through the simple act of refusing to accept less than they deserved. It was the most human thing they could have done.